Welcome back. I imagine a lot of you never thought you'd be here pressing play on this video, and honestly, neither did I. For those of you who know the story, you already understand why. For those of you who don't know, this was the White Whale, the video I had to chase and had to abandon, the one that slipped through my fingers every time I thought I had it. For months it sat unfinished, impossible to pull together, with only a few ideas in my head and on a Google Documents page. Until one night, I wasn't working on Arkham videos, I wasn't working on Lego Batman videos, I wasn't even working on YouTube, but out of nowhere, like a puzzle snapping into place, the entire vision hit me in a single wave. Everything I struggled with before suddenly made sense, and now, here we are. You've waited long enough, but before we get into this, let's lay down a few quick ground rules before we begin. Now, cards on the table, I am not a professional writer. I'm just a lifelong Batman fan with way too much time on his hands, sharing ideas that are purely hypothetical. Same goes for game design, I have no experience in it, and therefore I'll be mindful of what the tech at the time could reasonably handle, and try to be respectful of those limitations, as to not make an outline for an alternate take on the game that simply couldn't exist. Having knowledge of the prior game, both my take and the original, would really help, but it isn't absolutely required. I won't be recapping either here, so if you haven't already, go watch the Arkham Asylum ReWrite and come back in an hour. I'll still be here. Or if you'd rather dive in blind as a bat, that choice is yours. Personally though, I would recommend watching the Asylum ReWrite because this isn't the Arkham Batman you might be used to. He's different both in tone and in the tools at his disposal. For example, no explosive gel. That means that anywhere the original game relied on it, you'll see vents, doors, or alternative paths instead. Not everything I describe will line up perfectly with the footage on screen. I'll do my best to make it all clear. For example, if I'm talking about Nightwing footage will be on screen, but obviously since this is a hypothetical outline, certain visuals won't quite match all the time. And to be clear, I won't be breaking down every stealth or combat encounter, so slot those in where you see fit, because this is at its heart a story rewrite, and unless it's explicitly stated, gadgets, gameplay and things along those lines will be untouched. This isn't a gameplay rewrite at all, really. One of the best parts of releasing the Arkham Asylum ReWrite was reading your comments. You really embrace the challenge the idea, not the person mentality that makes this community so special. So let's keep that energy going here. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. Hell, I don't even agree with some of the changes I've made to make this story work. And that's fine. Share your thoughts, but keep it civil and constructive. I know this is kind of ridiculous playing God with what many people consider the best game in the series, and I know some fans get very defensive when something they love is critiqued. But remember, this is just my take. Nothing more, nothing less. It really isn't that deep. I'd like to think that I explain my ideas pretty well, and as per usual over here, I'm more than happy to answer any and every question you have down below when the video's out. So, time to lock in, time to get serious. After 5 months, countless delays, one outright cancellation, and more cryptic teases than I care to admit, welcome to the Batman Arkham City Cardiverse Rewrite. Bruce Wayne, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, stands on a stage giving an empowered speech about the newly constructed Arkham City. Ever since the asylum was shut following the Joker's escape, the newly instated mayor of Gotham, Quincy Sharp, pushed for the opening of his master plan, a prison made out of the bones of the Narrows, moving the inhabitants out, discarding them to the street to build a wall around their former home. Sharp promised the prison would house Gotham's worst while being patrolled by the mysterious and highly trained Tiger forces, who last ran Blackgate around the time of the Rat King's attempted Day of Wrath attack on the city over half a decade ago. Rumours suggest Tiger have taken over the old asylum as their HQ, but no one knows what they're really up to. Bruce's speech continues, rallying the people of Gotham behind a common cause, the walled-off mesh of human rights violations towering over him. Bruce knows he can do more as Bruce Wayne than Batman when it comes to this matter, but all of that comes to a grinding halt as Tiger forces rush the stage, knocking Bruce down and throwing him in the back of a van. We fade and a voice from the dark begins to speak. This scene remains the same as the main game. Strange tells Bruce all the usual stuff about how he's going to win and how something called Protocol 10 will make him Gotham's saviour, destroying the legacy of the Batman. He finishes by saying he knew capturing Bruce Wayne would be so much easier than Batman, revealing he knows Bruce Wayne is indeed the Dark Knight. My thinking behind keeping this the same was just to drive home the fact that tonight Batman will be fighting for both his legacy and his life. It splits Batman down the middle and means he has to fight on all fronts. Strange eventually walks out of the room, leaving Bruce in the chair. Bruce escapes the chair, grabs the keycard from the Tiger Guard, and gets thrown out into processing. Here we can see a few familiar faces just for some fan service, and a few hints at upcoming side missions that might appear in this game. We can see Mortimer Drake because he was in the Nightfall radio adaptation and he's quite funny, Black Mask because he's already there, and few Arkham Underworld fans, none of you, will have Professor Milo being taken into a cell. Bruce walks into Line A and meets Deadshot, and then gets put into the elevator processing thing with Jack Ryder. Ryder mentions that Strange has been at this for months, throwing esteemed media moguls like himself and stuck-up billionaires who think they can strong-arm their way into Gotham politics into his new pet project, for the simple reason that he wants to create a barrier between Arkham City and the rest of the city, and make sure no one knows his real motive. Bruce and Jack head into the usual section. Ryder begins being beaten down and the player counters a few moves before rescuing him, and it's here Penguin appears, telling Bruce that he's in his world now, Brucey boy, welcome to hell, before a thug knocks him out. Bruce wakes up and Penguin begins his monologue about good old-fashioned revenge, and Penguin throws a punch, but obviously Bruce counters it, breaking Penguin's flippers and fighting his men off. After the fight is over, Bruce heads to the roof and talks to Alfred. He calls in the Batsuit onto the roof of the Ace Chemicals building, and on the way up the two talk. Alfred asks if getting captured was a part of his plan, and Bruce says he's fine, and no, it wasn't a part of his plan. But he did get some valuable one-on-one time with Hugo Strange, who told him something about Protocol 10, a plan that would make him famous. Alfred tells Bruce he'll look into it before Bruce reaches the Batsuit drop and finally suits up. Before we continue, I wanted to, as I did in the Arkham Asylum rewrite, give you a little insight as to my original ideas. I had toyed with having a section where Bruce would have to stealth his way through Park Row and climb the buildings by hand while avoiding various thug patrols to get to the roof of Ace Chemicals, but I decided to keep this on the sidelines because it would have just added too much unnecessary fluff in this Batman game, and I wanted to avoid complaints from the same people who get angry when you have to play as Peter Parker in the Spider-Man games. You know who you are. And also, for the sake of this video, make Arkham City like 1.5 times bigger than it usually is. Same layout, same landmarks and points of interest, but just a tad bit bigger to accommodate for some stuff later on down the line. Not a huge change, but one that I thought was necessary to mention. Anyway, Batman is here. He throws the card he took from the Tiger Guard into the cryptographic sequencer, which is the same as it was in the real Arkham City. And he finds out that Two-Face, who's becoming the pseudo King of Park Row in his stint in the prison so far, is holding Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, hostage for a trial. The Tiger Guard begins talking about the last trial Dent held against Joker and how well that went in the background. Batman glides over to the courthouse and finds Dent hanging Selina over a vat of acid. This entire segment plays out the same, apart from one thing. Dent and Batman will actually talk after he's hung up. Batman asks him if he knows about Protocol 10, and he's been one of the longest serving inmates out of anyone here, so he might know something. Dent tells Batman he won't say anything to him. His trial has a biased jury after all. But Catwoman says he might as well talk or she'll break another one, and as Dent asks another what, she kicks him in the ribs, cracking one. Batman asks Dent again, and all Harvey splurts out is that he's heard rumours but nothing else. Some say it's a mass escape orchestrated by Strange, others say it's a plan for Strange to kill Batman and take Gotham for himself. It's two sides of the same coin at the end of the day, but they're just rumours. Batman asks Selina if she knows, but she tells Batman she hasn't heard anything. She only came to this dump to steal from Harv, but now she's here, she might as well have some fun. As the two talk, we cut to a sniper aimed directly at Catwoman's head. Batman sees the laser sight and the gun fires as Batman moves Catwoman out of the way, before we cut back to the sniper scope as a voice, very clearly Joker, says, "See you soon, Bats." We do the usual detective section and find the shot came from the top of the bell tower, so that's our next stop. Batman tells Selina to leave Arkham City, but she tells Batman she can handle herself. She's not the one who got brought in here against her will after all, as she flips her way out of the courthouse. Batman leaves the courthouse and heads to the church, where he enters through the front door and finds Harley Quinn flipping towards him. She is promptly taken down and she begins monologuing. She says, "You know, Bats, it's been a while. Mr. J really hasn't been himself lately, and why do you think that is? It can't have anything to do with you trying to kill him. Harley gets the wrong end of the stick here and begins telling Batman how much she hates him for putting Mr. J in the condition he's in. We don't know what that condition is yet, but we will come to find out in time. Quinn tells her men to shoot bats if he tries anything, which doesn't include staying the hell out of her and Mr. J's way. And then we get our stealth tutorial. We climb the tower of the church, and on our way up we can find a ton of dead rats like they've been bitten by a vampire. And if you scan them, you can answer one of the Riddler's riddles. The riddle is as follows: riddle me this, riddle me that, you're not the only big black bat. Just a little Batman Forever reference in there for you. And yes, this does mean Man-Bat already exists in my version of the Arkhamverse, because why not? Man-Bat's really cool. Also, I guess this means Eddie's made it into Arkham City, so I'm sure we're all thrilled about that. None of that has anything to do with the main story, but once we get to the top of the tower, the scene plays out the same. Detective mode, Joker speech, which does stay exactly the same, but in a different tone. He's less jovial and more resentful sounding towards Batman. Then we get the church explosion. After leaving the church, Alfred tells Batman he's pinpointed the signal controlling the remote sniper and it's in the steel mill. Alfred warns Bruce, tells him to tread lightly. Joker clearly isn't himself and might try something insane even by his standards. Batman says he'll be fine and begins heading towards the steel mill. It's a fortress, connected to the rest of the city by a bridge and guarded like some sort of royal palace. PA systems spew Joker propaganda and the thugs who live within the clown castle are armed to the teeth. Batman enters through the chimney as per usual, and this section stays the same until he enters the vent. While in the vents, Batman sees a doctor being tortured in a chair, but before he gets out of the vent, she's moved to the smelting chamber as Harley screams orders at her thugs. He jumps out of the vents and fights the thugs here, and Harley comes out of the office and tells Batman to politely leave her domicile and she will not be harassed, bitch. Alfred comes over the comms and tells Batman that he's come up short on the Protocol 10 search. It's nothing, it's a ghost. Batman tells Alfred to keep the search up, but tell Tim to go to the manor. Strange knows who he is, and he can't risk Tiger breaching Wayne Manor and thus the Batcave. Alfred says he'll get right on it, and Batman goes through the mill and eventually rescues the Doctor. Upon questioning her, she tells Batman that Joker has been dying for months now. He's literally decaying, poisoned by something called Titan. Batman says he knows what that is, and the Doctor tells him that it can't be cured. Joker is going to die, and on his way out he has one final gag, one last laugh. Batman tells her not to worry, forms the Rec Gun, which works the exact same way as in the real game because it's the Rec Gun and it's perfect in every way, and heads back to the entrance to the clown's office. He uses the newly minted gun to break through the front door of Jay's office, and as he grapples up to it, he's swiftly booted back down to Earth by Mr. Hammer. Hammer jumps down and tells Batman he won't let him pass. Batman just kind of looks at him, and then we get the same fight from the main game. Batman beats Hammer and grapples up to the office, and we get our cutscene. Harley is crying, and the Joker seems to be dead. She kneels down next to Mr. J's body, who's in a chair hooked up to a ton of different drips. But his heart monitor is flat. A continuous beep fills the air. Harley gets in Batman's face. She tells him she's going to kill him. She's going to bang. Joker jumps Batman, gasses him. He fell for the old fake Joker gag. Harley swings the bat into the bat, knocks him out, and we fade to black. As Batman wakes up, Joker tells Harley to back away from Bat. Batman says it was all a lie. There's nothing wrong with Joker, and Joker begins his monologue. He says, "Nice of you to say, but you of all people should know there's plenty wrong with me, and you know why? I do. You. I used to like you, Batsy. I really did. We had a good thing going, you and I, but leaving me to die on Arkham Island, now that's not funny. You never were very funny though, were you, Bats? Between all those nights crusading, you never stopped to think about me. And that's why I brought you here, because now I'm under your skin." Batman looks at the blood dripping into his stream next to him. He says, "So that's Protocol 10. Poison me? I expected more." Joker does the live Jonkler reaction meme and continues, "Protocol 10? Never heard of it. But I know, it's crazy. There's a teeny bit of me and you now, Bats. Enough to kill you. I never went to medical school, but I know one thing for sure. Our blood types, well, they probably won't mix well. I mean, how could they? Look at us. Add on to that the poison flowing through me, and well, we need a cure, Batsy. I know a man with a cure, but he went cold on me. The walking freezer at the GCPD has it. Anyway, You get the point, I'll be in touch. Joker kicks Batman, still strapped to the chair, out of the window. When Batman wakes up, a phone rings and Joker tells Batman he's so excited to work with him. Tonight they're going to rebuild their relationship and show these phonies what it means to be a real power couple. Batman opens his mouth to speak, but Joker cuts him off before he can say anything. He crushes the phone and puts the SIM card into his gauntlet, and Alfred comes over the comms as Batman begins heading over to the GCPD. He says, "What will you do, sir?" And Batman just replies, "Find Freeze, get the cure, find out what Strange is planning, and, take Joker down." He says this with a lot of uncertainty, almost doubting what he's saying. Now, I kept this part largely the same, but made a couple of tweaks. That being not having Joker poison Gotham, because not only will we not need that in the Arkham Knight rewrite, hint hint, but it's pointless. External stakes aren't needed here. I said this in my Arkham City retrospective, which I would recommend watching if you want to hear some more of my thoughts on this game, and because that video is probably the best video ever. But no, we have all the danger we could need here. Batman is now dying. Hugo Strange is looming over us with a 10-ton weight ready to drop on our heads in a few hours, and we don't know what's in store yet. That right there is all we need. Poisoning Gotham is a fun little add-on, but in the attempt to streamline the story and remove some of the unseen fluff, it had to go. My other change is that the Joker will acknowledge that Batman's main concern is the incompatible blood, not the fact it's poisoned with Titan, although that can't help his case. If you remember back in the Asylum rewrite, I said he had light Titan poisoning, and that kind of explains why he's still able to live this long, and this kind of just clears up confusion about what exactly makes Batman die so fast compared to the Joker. He is still poisoned with Titan, but the incompatible bloodstreams are much more of a big threat to Batman than the fact that he has been poisoned, because eventually it takes Joker months to die. It takes him 6 months from Asylum to City to die. So Batman dying in such a short time frame just doesn't feel right, and I feel like Joker acknowledging this, even in his kind of sick, twisted, haha, I never passed medical school way, kind of clears the air a little bit. Batman heads over to the GCPD, and on his way there, Joker would ring him. I'd have these phone calls with Joker be mandatory to listen to, unlike the main game where they're optional. They wouldn't break the mold and would be pretty similar to the main game. They'd all be about how bitter Joker was following the Asylum, how happy he is Batman's working with him, how displeased he's going to be if Batman keeps hurting his boys, that sort of thing. But these phone calls are going to be how Joker keeps himself relevant while Batman's off doing other stuff. I'd even make them more frequent, really turn Joker into an annoying ex. The main ones though, I'd keep them in the same place. After each main dungeon or segment, Batman gets a phone call, and I think that works quite nicely. Once Batman gets to the GCPD, it's crawling with Joker's men. He takes them out, and once inside he finds a dead Penguin thug, and he uses the cryptographic sequencer to listen to his communications. Penguin's men have holed up inside the GCPD to try and get a foothold on Joker's turf. They'd begin starting to push out from the Bowery onto Joker's turf to try and gain control of the city. But once inside the place, Batman takes out Penguin's men and interrogates the last man standing about the whereabouts of Freeze. The thug tells him Freeze is in the museum, but he won't be able to get in there. The place is a fortress. Batman knocks him out and asks Alfred if they have schematics of the museum, and Alfred says no recent ones, and that the ground-to-air missiles placed around Arkham City will make getting a scan from the Batwing impossible. But scans from a Wayne Tech satellite show the museum has no communications in or out besides Cobblepot's. The place is dark, and a jammer prevents anything going in or out that Cobblepot doesn't want. Alfred tells Batman that it's suicide to go in, not knowing what Horace Penguin has in store, but Bruce says that if he doesn't go in, him and Freeze will die, so he really has no other choice. At this point in the story, I want to begin harkening back to Asylum a little bit. The depravity, the fear, the isolation, we'll get into all of that later, but after leaving the GCPD, Penguin blows the freeway connecting Joker's crew to the rest of the prison, essentially cutting his forces off from the rest of the city. But Joker's men had already mobilised while we were messing about in the GCPD, and a few hundred got over there before the bridge blew, meaning the gang war is in Penguin's hands. Joker's Joker's men are cut off from their base, Two-Face's men are still reeling following Dent being captured at the start of the game, and that means it's Cobblepot's to lose. Cobblepot, knowing Batman is listening, tells him that if he's going to the museum, he's got a few surprises in store for him, and that he should probably think twice about it. A few hundred of Joker's men will now spend the rest of the game stuck on what I'm going to call the mainland. A few of his gang will appear in the open world, dotted here and there, basically those who aren't dead. Maybe even some will be found cowering in corners of the city, cut off from their crew. We might even be able to find little fights going on between the different gangs that Batman has to break up, a little bit like the crimes in progress in Arkham Origins. Perhaps Joker's gang will be outnumbered, and in a weird turn of events, Batman has to save them, and after each of these random events, Joker will thank him in a classic Joker way. I'd have it so after saving 10 lots of Joker's men from being killed, while still knocking them out obviously, Joker will ring Batman and thank him, saying he's strengthening their relationship again, and this is how it should be. The Broody Bat and the Clown Prince on the same side. To avoid confusion though, this won't be a side mission. Think of the random event in a game like Red Dead Redemption 2. You don't get anything for completing these except that little call from Joker when they're done, and they can only be completed during the events of the main campaign, leaving them to be a fun little bit of side content just to add to the world building. Batman heads over to the museum, avoiding the droves of thugs now patrolling the street. Once he's nearly there, Alfred wishes him good luck, and Batman tells him to have Nightwing be prepared to finish this if he doesn't make it out, driving home the fact this is going to be a gauntlet from hell. He knows he's dying and the effects are already seeping in. Batman can feel himself faltering, and I think it's also worth mentioning that Hugo Strange's countdowns are happening. He's giving us updates of the time of Protocol 10 beginning, and I'm not smart enough to fit them in because I'm notoriously bad at counting and keeping track of things like this, and I'd rather save myself the embarrassment. But just know throughout the game he's giving us updates just like the real game. Batman goes through the front door and his comms cut off. If you're wondering why Penguin can transmit things in and out of the museum but no one else can, it's a very specific jammer that ruins everyone else's comms but his. If you've seen the Arkham Asylum ReWrite, you'll know this is basically what happened there. Batman was cut off on his own, having to rely on himself at all times. This time though, his mission is clear. Get in, grab Freeze, shut down the jammer and get out, if only it were that easy. It's also worth mentioning in this segment that detective mode would be a little bit buggy. It works, but only for a limited time. The jammer at the back of the museum is blocking most outside signals, and Batman tells Alfred to reroute all Wayne Tech satellites before he goes in, but it isn't enough to ensure a stable connection, so during this segment, your stealth mode crutch will sometimes just give out, or play the jammer effect like the main game. Once inside the museum, Terry the T-Rex jump scares us, not Batman though obviously, and he finds a man being beaten down, and this is where we're introduced to the armoured enemies, who function exactly as they do in the main game. After beating the thugs down and saving the man, Batman finds out there's still a few more cops alive in here, so he heads and adds that to the list of things he needs to do during his time in the museum. He heads deeper into the museum, the walls closing in on him, the display case is towering over Batman, like the museum in the original game but the Lovecraftian horror ramped up. It's dark, corner cover is essential to avoid being jumped by incoming armoured thugs. The walk to the gladiator pit feels like a section straight out of Resident Evil. Cobblepot has turned the museum into a house of horrors. For the player, a callback to the asylum. For Batman, a challenge he could really do without, and for Penguin, a chance to weaken the Bat before he gets Freeze, or him. While making his way to the pit, Batman comes across a poster for an old circus act, Waylon Jones, the Crocodile Man. Taking out the three thugs surrounding the poster, Batman makes it to the gladiator pit. Weapons line the walls, hammers, knives, swords, guns, maces, and to cap it off, an electric fence surrounds the whole thing, and aside from the three main gates in front of him, it's like a saw room. Nothing in here is fun. The floor is covered in the blood of inmates who've tried to get through Penguin's initiation trials, and as Batman walks in, one of Gordon's cops comes running out but is sniped by Penguin, killing him instantly. Penguin waddles out and says, "So Batman, you here for the cops, the Iceman, or me?" Batman tells Cobblepot he's taking all three one way or another, and Penguin begins telling Batman he has a case for him. He's a collector and he wants him as the crown jewel in said collection. A case guarded to the nines with automatic turrets, saws, horrible things, can be found behind Penguin labelled the Batman. Once a hero, now a trophy. Penguin points to it and says that's his new home, and if he gets in without a fight, he'll let him, as he points towards another cop being held by his neck by Mr. Sickle, live. Batman looks at Penguin, then the cop, and says if he lets the cop go, he'll get in the case. Penguin says that sounds like a good deal, but he wants to soften him up first, so he opens the cages surrounding the area, and a horde of thugs come rushing out. Batman takes them out, as he does in the main game, and this annoys Penguin, and he tells Batman he has one more trick up his sleeve. Shooting a button on a wall and it opens a giant container, and out of it crawls a green mass of scales, a freak of nature, Killer Croc. Croc will be mangled, almost horror-like in this game, a much more disturbed version than his original Asylum look. He's big, green, scaly, jagged, and he looks awful. Batman takes a step back and says, "Waylon?" There's a pause before Cobblepot says, "I'll let you two get acquainted then, eh? Good luck with that, Batman. I've got a war to win." Penguin leaves the museum, heading to a safe house in the Bowery, and Croc lunges at Batman. Batman gets out of the way and asks Croc how he ended up here, and Croc just snarls at him, lunging at him again. In this boss fight, Batman has to lure Croc into the electrical fences surrounding the arena, and uses the weapons on the wall to try and subdue him. The player has to read his attacks, dodge them, and then either try and perform an ultra cape stun on Croc, or throw weapons at him to knock him off balance before landing a beatdown on him. After taking Croc down, a cutscene plays where Croc takes one final swing at Batman, but Batman dodges underneath it and wraps the Batclaw around his feet, tripping him over before he runs up his back and punches him in the head, knocking him out. The camera pans down into Croc's eye and we see some tears form in his eye as he goes unconscious. Now, I know, if you're a fan of this channel, you'll probably be thinking, surprise, surprise, the Killer Croc fan has shoehorned him into the story. But I have plans for Croc in the upcoming stories that will mean those shed tears at the end of this fight will hold significance. After being impaled and thrown into the water back in Asylum, Croc's mutation got worse, but things always get worse before they get better. And those tears are a way of signifying that although this is as animalistic as he'll get in the series, things are looking up for him. For the first time in years, he shed a tear. Croc is one of the only characters in the series I have a really clear idea for where I want to take him, and when it's all said and done, I think it'll be a welcome change from his real world counterpart. And if you're wondering why and how Penguin got Croc, well, like he says, he's a collector. If someone wants it, he has it, and if he doesn't have it, he'll get it, and what's cooler to own than a human-shaped crocodile? After tying Croc down, Batman heads through the gates to his left, which leads him into more winding corridors, and eventually to the torture chamber, where he finds a few undercover cops. He rescues them, and the gameplay within this section stays largely untouched. You can use the claw and rafts to get around the water, and you have to sneak over the ice. Here, the player can go left, right, but not straight ahead just yet. For the sake of this, though, we'll head into the Mammoth stealth room on the right-hand side. In this room, a group of cops are being held hostage, and some armed thugs patrol the room. This time though, they've got thermal imaging headsets, which means Batman can't hide in the rafters if they're looking for him. Without detective mode and without the consistent safety net of the gargoyles to fall back on, Batman has to rely on his tactical know-how, and this would be one of the harder rooms in the game just through pure limitations. After making his way through the room and taking the thugs out, Batman speaks to one of the officers, who tells him they brought Freeze in here earlier to torture him. The sick bastard dragged Freeze across the ice to bring him in here, take his suit and put him through hell. Batman asks if he knows where Freeze is now, and the cop tells him that he's probably over the other side of the lake. Batman tells him that him and his men need to lock this room down, no one in or out until he's back, and then he heads straight off across the lake. Once over there and heading down another dimly lit corridor straight out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Batman enters the tropical cabana where Freeze is being held, slowly being killed by the light emitting from his own display case. Batman opens a door to go around the back of the case to get him out, but Mr. Sickle grabs him, breaking through the door and picking him up by the neck before throwing him across the room. And this fight is exactly the same all the way up until Batman grabs Freeze from his display case, and obviously he doesn't use the sequencer to get in because, well, the jammer is blocking that, so he just presses a button. Once out of the cage, Batman immediately begins asking about the cure. Freeze says he doesn't care about the cure, he wants his suit. This scene basically plays out the same, but the reasoning for Batman grabbing the disruptor is to shut down the jammer emitting the signal that's stopping comms in and out of the museum. Batman leaves Freeze and heads back over the lake, grabs the disruptor and tells the cops to let Freeze in when he gets there. How does he get there? Good question. I don't know. Does he swim? Does he do a really big jump? Who knows? And quite frankly, who cares? Batman goes over onto a raft and heads to the Iceberg Lounge to bring the jammer signal down, but he's attacked by Tiny the Shark, who's been roaming around under the water for a while. Now, I'd even make it so each time we pass over the water, more bodies float to the surface. Not dismembered or anything, I'm all for some darkness, but I think dismembering people is a little too far for the game. But for those keen-eyed players who'd catch on that these bodies are popping up, it's a cool way to foreshadow this little encounter. After entering the Iceberg Lounge, a large console with a comically large dish sits in the back of the room, guarded by a whole host of thugs, and Batman has to clear the room of thugs, fighting armoured thugs, knife thugs, all kinds we've met so far, and eventually breaking through a wall, a Titan thug. This thug confirms Penguin has some Titan and it's still out in the wild, and this will tie into the Bane side mission, which would stay largely the same in this game. After defeating the Titan thug by luring him into the different pillars around the lounge and causing a balcony to drop on his head, knocking him out, Batman can use the Disruptor and finish the jamming signal off for good. Okay, so I feel like I've got a little bit of explaining to do here. Why no Solomon Grundy boss fight? Well, first of all, I want you all to know I tried so hard and got so far, and in the end it didn't even matter, because without Penguin, the Grundy fight just feels weird, and what I've got planned for Penguin coming up is a little bit cooler and more interesting than narrating a Solomon Grundy boss fight. I had a concept for a fight where Batman would need to hit switches around catacombs to try and shut the power off to Grundy before Batman would rip out his heart, but I couldn't think of a reason why Batman ends up in the catacombs like this, and why the museum would even have catacombs in the first place. And I already kind of played that card in the Asylum ReWrite, so I don't want every game to have a stealth-based catacomb fight, because, well, that's just lazy. I liked the Grundy fight, but I like the Croc fight more, and I wanted to shake up things a little, so Croc takes Grundy's place. Penguin not being present here will also make sense later when, well, yeah. Anyway, we cut to Batman and Freeze talking at the entrance of the museum. This is the same as the main game, escaping ninja and all. So, as surprising as this might be for long-time fans of the channel, the League of Shadows are actually going to show up. Batman gets back in contact with Alfred, and Alfred sounds exhausted. While in the museum, Tiger raided Wayne Manor, but Alfred and Tim Drake fought them off. The police arrived and the manor is secure now, but Strange has begun his assault on Bruce's personal life now. Alfred says he and Tim are okay before asking if Bruce is. Bruce says he's fine, worsening, but alive, and this is where Alfred takes a step back to clean up the mess at the manor, and Oracle takes over as the voice in the ear. You could even, if you really wanted to, this isn't in the script, but you could have a little DLC where Tim defends the manor. That could be quite fun, and it could just use the challenge maps that we already got in the actual game. Anyway though, after the ninja breaks out of the cabinet and cuts herself, leaving a trail for Batman to follow, Batman and Oracle talk about the night's proceedings and how Alfred brought her up to date. Oracle says she's worried that Batman is going to the League for different reasons, but Batman assures her that Talia hasn't been seen in months. Batman follows the trail, and when he reaches its end, he falters, his illness getting to him. But he does some brief detective work before he's jumped. A fight ensues on the rooftop as Batman fails to land a strike on one of three ninjas who've come to help their sister out. All three of them slip his attacks, the Dark Knight still reeling from his brief stumble, but out of the blue, wingding, lodged into the floor, the ninja who Batman is focusing on is taken out with a perfectly executed super kick. The camera pans up. Nightwing. The ninjas all scatter. Need some help? The first boy wonder arrives in Arkham City. Batman asks why he's here, and Dick tells him Alfred told him to come and said he needed some help. You know, with this. He gestures around the city. Bruce hesitates and then thanks Dick. He knows he's reaching his end here, and every second he wastes pushes him one step closer to the edge, and he's about to break. That's the second Linkin Park lyric I've fit into this video. Dick tells him he's staying in Arkham City. Tim's guarding the manor and Lucius has locked Wayne Enterprises down, and it's more of a fortress than this place. He wants to help. Bruce tells Dick that he's following a trail to Ra's al Ghul, and Dick tries to make a joke about Talia, but Bruce just looks at him, deadpan with that sort of dad face. You know the one. Dick asks what lead he has, and Batman looks over to one of the ninjas now disappearing over the top of the Ace Chemicals building, and points and says, "That's my lead." During the fight, Bruce managed to attach a sneaky little tracker onto one of their backs. Dick smiles. Clever. Dick, listen to me. There's something else. A gang war. Cobblepot's men, Harvey's men, Joker's men, they're all vying for turf. I need you to find where Cobblepot and Dent are held up. Joker is in the old Sionis steel mill, and after this is over, we'll bring him down too. Nightwing says he knows he can help more, but Batman reminds him that this, stopping the bubbling gang war, is as important as anything else. If the war starts, thousands will die, and a breakout could very easily happen. He just needs to get the cure from Freeze after he speaks to Raish, and then they can figure all of this out. Dick agrees and hands Bruce the line launcher. Here, Lucius asked me to give you this, said you found it handy, but don't pack it. Batman grabs his new gadget, stores it in the belt, thanks Dick as Dick flips away to go and hunt Penguin and Dent. Now, I toyed with the idea of making this into a nice little DLC called A War on Two Fronts, but with things I want to do in the story later, I decided against it, although depending on how greedy the devs in this alternate timeline were, it could work as a DLC pretty well. Basically, here you'd play as Nightwing, hunting down Penguin and Two-Face's hideout. The fun part is that you can choose who to go after first, and then circle back for the other later, and of course I'll let you know when the second part of this begins. The starting point is right after Nightwing leaves Batman on the rooftops. Bruce heads off to talk with Ra's al Ghul, which leaves Dick in Arkham City with a very clear instruction. Keep an eye on Penguin and Dent, hunt them down, but do not engage them directly, because if Nightwing makes the wrong move, he risks setting off a gang war while Batman is out of the picture. So Nightwing takes on the role of investigator. He follows leads, shakes down thugs, and works his way through each criminal's network within the city. The structure is the same on both sides. First a combat encounter, then a Predator section, and finally a mini-boss fight themed around whichever villain he's pursuing. He'd do this 3 times for Penguin and 3 times for Two-Face, giving you 6 operations in total. Penguin's path leads to a showdown with, and hold your applause everybody, Killer Moth. It would be his first on-screen appearance in the Arkham series. The fight is short, but it would have a little bit of spectacle. Moth fires off his cocoon gun, Nightwing dodges and counters, and when Moth retreats to the ceiling, you shoot him with the wrist darts to bring him down for good. It only happens a couple of times, but it shows that even someone like Moth can be a nuisance when you give him a spotlight. Beating him, though, confirms Penguin is arming up in the subway station and raiding food shipments across the city. Two-Face's path, which you can do now or later, gives us Copperhead, brought back as a callback to Arkham Origins. Her fight plays out in stealth rather than straight combat, and you'd have to wait for the right opening to strike when she thinks she's cornered him. The focus is all about timing and not so much button mashing or usual stealth. Taking her down reveals that Dent has turned the old DA's office in Park Row into a fortress, stockpiled with weapons and men, while she's been taking money from Joker to spy on him. Dent's henchmen add another wrinkle though. When interrogated, they can give Nightwing 2 possible locations. One is real, the other is a decoy. The fake ones for me would be a perfect, opportunity to show silly Easter eggs or throwaway jokes, while the real ones would push the story forward. It makes Nightwing's side of things feel like detective work instead of just following objective markers. The missions wouldn't be limited to safe houses either. Sometimes you'd intercept rooftop crews or break up crimes happening in the streets, and with Nightwing's more playful tone, it would be a chance to mix in some one-liners and banter to contrast Batman's serious campaign. By the end of this first part, after scouting one of the operations, Nightwing would report back to Oracle and Batman, and that's where this part would fade out and drop you back into playing as Bruce. Back as Batman, and by this point Batman would have just made it into the sewers. Do you see what I mean about needing a slightly bigger map, just to kind of make that make sense? Anyway, Batman would have to drop down the same hole we usually go down in the amusement mile. He'd navigate the sewers, and down here it would be like a maze, kind of like the real game. It's just corridors of brick everywhere, but go down the right ones and you should pop out at the collapsing streets of Wonder City. It's here Batman would have his first real genuine fit of illness. He'd cough blood, there'd be no music, just the sound of the Dark Knight spluttering blood out between his final few minutes of air. Oracle would ask Bruce if he's alright and he'd say yes, but she'd know he was lying. His suit's vital signs are dropping rapidly, and if he doesn't sort himself out soon, he's going to die. He carries on and finds some of Joker's thugs surrounded by crates of weapons, military-grade weapons, stuff that you can't smuggle into Arkham City. After taking out the surrounding thugs, Batman does a little detective section, and he looks at the boxes that have the Tiger logo on them and puts 2 and 2 together. Hugo Strange has been giving weapons to all sides. Serious stuff. ARs, shotguns, thermal goggles, body armour. He's just been going crazy, giving everyone everything they need to start an all-out war in the streets of Arkham City. He's orchestrating this whole thing, but Why? Is this Protocol 10 a gang war? We don't know. Batman heads into the Wonder Tower Foundations where the same stealth room as before plays out. Batman takes out Joker's men and rescues the Doctor, who tells him that she didn't even know she was in Arkham City. She was taken from the hospital she was interning at. She was drugged and woke up here, showing that the Joker's quest to be fixed has been pretty relentless. Now, from here, Batman follows the tracker and enters Wonder Avenue. This entire section is my single favourite in the series, so I'm keeping this. From here, at least. The monologue about how great Wonder City will be, the asylum inmates hanging from the ceiling, although I'd add some straitjacket henchmen in there just to harken back to them from the Asylum rewrite. I just love this whole section. It's unnerving, it's dark, it's creepy, it's awesome, and so it's staying completely with just the one change I mentioned, just to bring it more in line with the first game. Batman would enter Wonder Avenue and begin scanning around, commenting on the infamous Wonder City Guardians. He'd mention how they seem to be recording everything, and I'd even have one which seems to follow Batman's movements. It would be the only one to do that, but just that little hint of being watched would be more than enough to push the already unsettling feeling of this area over the edge. Batman would see the main gate hasn't been opened in decades, and the ninja clearly didn't go through it, coming to the conclusion there's a secret passage somewhere, so he scans the Wonder City Guardians, as per is the main game, using their memories to piece together footage of the ninja using a secret ninja exclusive door. He goes to it, gets jumped by a ninja, and after getting through, he goes through the final sewer section, climbs the ladder leading to the tracker's last known location, and when he makes it to the top, he stumbles, perhaps for one of the final times. His vitals drop, the player's health bar hits 1-hit status, and Bruce sees his parents calling to him, telling him to visit them, to finally rest and lay down. Bruce reaches his hand out, reaching for his parents, his head hits the ground, and black. Here we transition into the second part of Nightwing's DLC/section. If you took on the Penguin side of it first, you take on Two-Face here, and vice versa. The same thing applies as before. One combat encounter, one stealth encounter, and then the relevant mini-boss. This would end with Nightwing getting on the comms to Oracle, telling her he's figured out where the relevant villain is hiding out, and arming up. He tried to tell Bruce, but Oracle says she hasn't heard from him since his vitals dropped earlier. Nightwing goes silent and Oracle tells Nightwing to just stay calm and wait. Bruce wouldn't have given up that easily, they just need to wait and hope he's still alive. We cut back to Bruce, he slowly wakes up, he looks around, ninjas line the room. Bruce swings his legs off the table he's lying on, mask still on, gadgets however gone. Bruce looks at the door ahead of him and the ninjas all bow their heads. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's welcomes the detective to the League's home, he invites Batman to rest a while. Batman cuts right to the chase and asks a question he already knows the answer to. He asks Ra's, "How am I alive?" The decaying, zombie-looking Ra's tells him his ninjas rescued him. They found him at the gate, collapsed. He's been given some Lazarus, and he must be here for a good reason, so what is it? Batman partly tells the truth and tells Ra's she needs some of his blood, just a drop, revealing a bit of a desperate side to Batman we saw a few times in the Arkham Asylum rewrite. Ra's laughs and he says, "My blood? Is that a threat, detective?" Ra's tells him that he can have his blood if he takes on the demon trials. He continues that the Lazarus Pit is now doing more harm than good. It's killing him slowly with every use. Years of abuse has degraded his body and mind, and now he's looking for a successor. Batman, knowing he won't get anything out of Ra's if he declines his offer, says he'll do it. Ra's tells Batman to follow him, and Batman follows Ra's through some corridors that eventually lead to a door. He says, "The demon trials await, and I must warn you, detective, no man has come out alive." Batman just looks at Ra's and goes through the door ahead. Now, in the real game, I always had a tiny issue with the demon trials. Talia says no man has completed them, but like I said in my Arkham City retrospective, no shit, Talia, no man has a cape, a grapnel gun, and plot armor like this. I know the demon trials are supposedly tailored to the person taking them on, but even so, I just didn't really like the demon trials. I think visually, they're the most stunning part of Batman Arkham City, but gameplay-wise, I'd like to make a few adjustments here. My changes would be that the trials take all of Batman's gadgets away, making him literally just a man. And the test would be a test of everything in Batman's locker. It begins with some traversal, a sort of obstacle course. It would take running, jumping, hanging and shuffling, sliding, crouching, everything the player has learned over some obstacles chemicals that would take the player out in one hit. Following this, the player would face off against a ton of sand ninjas in an area, with the caveat being that if Batman gets hit, they restart, a bit like Azrael's trial in Arkham Knight. The final section would be a stealth section where the player has to take out 8 guards in a room without being spotted. The guards are allowed to find their comrades, but if they spot Batman, the trial ends and the player needs to go again. No gadgets, just kind of stealth and technique, taking Batman back to his roots. After completing those 3 trials, which would differ in difficulty depending on the player's selected level, Batman would leave the trials and grab his belt as Ra's would appear and tell Batman he's proud of him. Talia would be proud of him. This is what she always wanted for him, to join her when Ra's died. Ra's would then hand Batman his sword, telling him to strike him down, kill him, take his place and bask in the glorious Lazarus Pit. Batman holds the sword and looks down at it, faced with his own mortality, not knowing how much Lazarus Ra's already gave him when he was out, not knowing how much long he has left. You can tell he's faltering mentally here. He lifts the sword up above his head, swings it down and jams it into the floor next to Ra's. He comes clean to Ra's, telling him he needs his blood for the cure to his ailment. He never wanted to become the head of the demon, he just needs a bit of his blood to live. Ra's pushes Batman back, falls back into the Lazarus Pit, and the pit begins lighting up and doing some really dramatic looking stuff, and Ra's comes out looking new again. Batman steps back and Ra's appears from the pool and tells Batman that if he won't kill him, he will die. One of them has to die and he doesn't have a preference for who goes. In the Lazarus room, we get a Ra's boss fight. No tricks, no sand people, no large sand Ra's. This will be a fight between 2 of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the Arkhamverse. This is the Deathstroke fight. This is Arkham City's hell yeah moment. 2 fighters, both at the top of their games due to Lazarus, beating the tar out of each other. It begins with just that, counters, strikes, dodges, hand-to-hand combat. After besting Ra's though, the head of the demon would pick his sword up in the second phase, and this would be similar. We'd get that I ain't gonna sugarcoat it spam and that kind of thing, until eventually Batman would get the upper hand, slip some sword strikes and get the sword off Ra's, leaving him on his knees, begging Batman to kill him. Batman says no, picks Ra's up, extracts some of his blood and knocks him out. The scene fades and we cut to Batman outside of the League's base. He contacts Oracle. He says, "Oracle, I'm back," and Oracle would be audibly shocked, thanking God. She says, "Oh my God, Bruce, we all thought you were well, and Batman says he's sorry to disappoint, and then as the player makes their way back through Wonder Avenue and back to the surface, Oracle will tell Bruce she's called in Tim from the manor. Alfred implored him to go, telling Tim that he has the manor covered in case of another Tiger Squad. Bruce thanks Oracle and tells her about his race detour. He then switches channels to talk to Tim and Dick, and the pair are doing some recon on Penguin and Two-Face's strongholds, and they're both shocked to hear their dad's voice again. There's a sweet moment where the sons are genuinely relieved about their dad coming back, but it can't last for long. Bruce informs them, and I guess Oracle, since she's definitely listening in, that Stranger's been giving military-grade weapons to all sides of the gang war. He's manufacturing it 1 killing at a time, forcing it to go further than it need to go. I'd also love if on the way back up to the surface we found maybe 1 or 2 instances of Tiger Squads killing either Penguin or Two-Faces or even Joker's men, framing it to look like their rivals had done it just to add more tension and another layer of Strange flexing his control over the situation. Tim and Dick would say they've seen the weapons. Every side has snipers, thermal goggles, machine guns. It's going to be a war zone. And as he says that, we can hear a gang of Joker's men open fire on the streets below, with Penguin's frequency blaring into Batman's ear, with Cobblepot telling his men to go and kill any son of a bitch who stands in their way, and this marks the beginning of the Arkham City gang war. Bruce tells Dick and Tim to get to higher ground and not to engage. There's no telling what weaponry they've all got. He tells the pair to meet them on the roof of the Ace Chemicals building and that they've got work to do. We'd go a different way to the surface than the usual game, basically the way we came in, popping out in the amusement mile. I toyed with bringing Batman up to the surface through a different way closer to Ace Chemicals, but thought I'd bring him up here so the player has to glide across Arkham City, avoiding the streets, taking out rooftop patrols and really engaging with the gang war. Batman makes it to Ace Chemicals with Robin and Nightwing not far behind him, both arriving just after he does. As the boys arrive on the rooftop, they all begin discussing tactics, takes who, what weaponry every side has, that sort of stuff. With Bruce not knowing though how much time he has left, he tells Nightwing to go after Penguin and Robin to go after Two-Face while Bruce heads to the GCPD to go and get the cure from Freeze. Oracle would then come over the radio and tell Bruce that a City Hall meeting was just called and Strange's Protocol 10 is going through the activation process. He told the High Council of Gotham he'd failed to both stop the stem of illegal weapons in the prison and ensure violent behaviour between gangs wouldn't be an issue. Batman reiterates the point that Strange had orchestrated all of this from the start and just needed to light the fuse to make the proverbial powder keg blow, the fuse being the gangs and the match being the weapons he provided to them all. The trio all look at each other with Tim seeming the most concerned, and Dick points out that at this point they still don't actually know what Protocol 10 is, and Bruce says they need to focus on the task at hand and deal with Strange later, because if they don't stop this gang war, God knows what could happen. As far as Joker's concerned, despite being the biggest of the gangs, with his men being cut off from their home base, and with Batman having to go after him by the end of the night anyway, Joker won't really be a factor here. It's just kind of assumed that taking out 2/3 of the gangs in the war would essentially end it to a certain degree, so here we could go a few ways. We could A, let the player play through both characters' fights against Dent and Cobblepot respectively, but making sure the player knew these two parts were taking place simultaneously, or B, make the player choose which option to play through, giving a new level of replayability with the branching options. For simplicity's sake, I'll talk about these Nightwing and Robin parts like they're both playable, with the player picking one, with the other part they don't pick being playable on a repeat playthrough, with all of this running alongside Batman's trip to the GCPD. So, as Robin, the player would have to make their way to the old DA's office, but here it's like a little fortress. It's completely blocked off, the street is guarded to the nines by armed thugs with high-grade weaponry fighting off other thugs from the two opposing gangs. Robin would need to deal with a large encounter on the roof, taking out a group of thugs who all have the mod cons that come with being funded by a mad scientist. Once inside the DA's office, it would be empty, a burnt-out husk of a former bustling hub of political prowess. Robin would follow a light which leads down some stairs and into an expansive basement, built by Dent's men over the course of his stint in Arkham City, because, if you remember from earlier, he's one of the longest-serving inmates in the city. Once in the giant room, Harvey would appear over the PA system and we'd get a large stealth encounter, with Robin having to navigate a room with no vantage points. And after sneaking, bullet shielding, and silent takedowning his way through Dent's thugs, Dent himself would drop into the arena with a few more thugs, and we get a sweet spot between Catwoman's drawn-out, genuinely mind-numbing boss fight in the real game, and Batman's, oh wait, that was Two-Face, boss encounter against the former DA in Night. We'd achieve this by having Dent be wearing armour, and putting caps on how many times you need to take him down with a combination of beatdowns, and carefully ricocheted shots using the bullet shield. I propose 3 on easy, 5 on normal, 6 on hard and 7 on new game plus. I'd make the goons who come in with Harvey his quote-unquote special enforcers, who each have their own special equipment. One with a jammer, one with a dragon's breath shotgun, which would be a 2-hit kill on normal, and one with thermal goggles which can track your footsteps. This might be fun, if not a little tricky, but hey, this is a boss fight. After finishing this, Tim would pick up Harv and hold his bow staff over his head, ordering him to tell all his men to fall back. After some resistance, Harvey would give in and do it, ordering his men to stand down. He'd then call into Oracle, telling her Dent is down and his men are indeed falling back, and she'd tell him that Cobblepot's men are too. Tim would comment that he wasn't as fast as Dick because Dent had more guns. On Nightwing's side, Dick would have to make his way to the subway station, through the sewers, and he'd have to fight a few waves of thugs, all armed with different melee weapons of course, and eventually he'd make it to the central subway terminal where Batman takes out Jammer in the real game. Penguin has locked himself in this little room above the terminal, just imagine this, has like a little throne in it basically, and as Dick walks in he's faced with a few thugs who he has to take out, before Penguin says he's got something fun in mind for him, as 2 Titan thugs crash through the walls, clearing the train car out of the way, and we get a dual Titan fight. I know what you're thinking, well, I don't, but Anyway, here's how that fight would work. Dick would have to use his wingdings to confuse the Titans before shooting them with wrist darts to slow them down and make them open to attacks. If the player tried to shoot before the Titan was stunned, they just bat the dart out of the air and carry on. After taking out both Titans and the surrounding thugs, Dick would break the floor underneath Cobblepot and force him to call his men off, which, after the threat of 40,000 volts to the skull, he'd eventually do, bringing the gang war to an end. Kind of. See, after this is done, I'd actually keep a handful of thugs still fighting on the street, and I'd kind of like mess the city up here and really make it look like a war zone. I want just enough of the gang war to be continuing between sort of rogue cells of the gangs to warrant Protocol 10 still going ahead. But on the same side, you know, I'd also want to keep Joker's men on the offensive and kind of have them slowly take over the map now. The actual all-out war part wouldn't be over, it would just be softened. A large majority of thugs would stop when asked, but some wouldn't, so maybe keep these guys around as side content, cleaning up the remnants of the gang war, and maybe even make some parts of the map genuinely kind of hard to navigate until this is done. We'd then fade back to Batman, who at this point would be just outside the GCPD. The gang war quietly comes to an end behind him, and Oracle would tell him Dent and Cobblepot are down. Batman tells the pair to hold Joker's men back, who are now killing for killing's sake, as best they can, but if it gets too much, just retreat. Once inside the GCPD, Batman and Freeze would have their confrontation, the same as the real game. In fact, this whole sequence is the exact same. The cutscenes, the fight... Obviously the fight, duh, you thought I was actually going to redesign that? Hell no, that thing is perfect. After the fight, I wouldn't change a thing either. Harley steals the cure, Victor tries to make it about him because he's just insensitive, and Batman gets his hands on the freeze blast. Upon leaving the GCPD out of the back door, a news helicopter would appear filming Batman. It's Vicky Vale. But it would subsequently be shot down and Joker would find this hilarious. Batman would go and rescue Vale before Batman and Joker had a brief conversation where Joker admits he did that for two reasons. The first being he needed the cure back to him and couldn't risk Batman catching up to Harley, and the second reason is that, well, it's really funny. Then we'd cut away to a mysterious hooded figure stood watching over Batman from a distance with a camera before he disappeared. Batman calls Dick and Tim over the comms and he explains that Joker had Harley take the cure when Victor got a little angry over Batman not having the time or power to go after his wife in his current state. Dick asks what the plan is and Tim suggests having Lucius try and make a cure. Batman concurs, seeing it as his only hope. He tells Tim to head to Wonder City and get more of Raish's blood. He sends Tim the coordinates and tells him Raish won't be a problem, he won't have woken up yet. Dick says he'll go with him, but Bruce says he needs eyes above ground to make sure things don't reignite between the gangs and the still mysterious Protocol 10 doesn't start. Dick reluctantly agrees, knowing it's the right thing to do, but being unhappy he can't protect his brother-in-arms if things go sideways. I know what you're probably thinking here, because I was kind of thinking the same thing when I was storyboarding this and making notes. Dick is getting a lot of limelight here, with Tim seeming like a bit of an afterthought. And you'd be right. My reasoning for this is that I want to present Tim as still being new to this, especially this level of pressure. Tim won't be a 27-year-old man here, he'll be 20 to 23-ish. Because, as we know, Batman recruits his Robins a little later in the Arkham games than other interpretations. Tim is still unproven to the fullest extent at this point, with Dick wanting to protect him as much as he can following what happened to Jason. Batman, however, while still being very cautious, knows Tim is stronger than he knows and he wants to push him a little far. Not too far, but pushing him to operate as a good solo hero by himself. He trusts him and he knows him and Dick are the best because he trained them, but Tim doesn't know if he believes in himself at this point, and so in this game, Tim might seem like an afterthought, but this is his first real high-stakes night as Robin that affects not only his father's life, but thousands of people both in the prison and outside of the walls should a breakout occur. In the Arkham Knight ReWrite, Tim will have evolved. He'll be someone stronger and better altogether. Tonight is going to kind of be his baptism by fire. I don't want to reveal too much about a future Arkham Knight ReWrite yet, but Tim will be in the limelight, with Dick taking a back seat due to his commitments in Bloodhaven. Not to say he won't play a big part, just not as big as here. My thought process was to give both Tim and Dick their games to shine. Dick gets City, Tim gets Night, and they both get Talon, which, for those of you who don't know what that is a community-wide project I'm working on where I've had help from 13 other Arkham content creators to write a concept for a completely original Arkham game, and that will be the send-off for the Cardiverse series. Anyway, Batman knows he has to go to the steel mill to get the cure, and aside from a few cosmetic changes and a couple of encounter changes once we're in the steel mill, I'd keep this largely the same. Batman would use the freeze blast to get through the tunnels, and Batman would eventually hear rumblings of Joker being cured. He looks normal again. Inmates say how he's never looked better and he looks like the quote-unquote old Mr. J. After taking out a group of thugs stood near a big monitor, Joker comes onto the monitor and begins telling us he feels amazing, but we can hear someone coughing behind the camera. Whoever's filming Joker isn't doing very well for themselves. Batman opens the door next to him, and here we'd enter my new and improved Joker's Funhouse section. This would span from one end of the mill right through to the real Joker's Funhouse fight that we actually get in the game. In this funhouse, we'd have to fight through the steel mill while Joker retells us his one bad day from Arkham Origins, making that the canon meeting for him and Harley. But also, he'd every now and then make slight references to Batman's real identity, kind of hinting that he might know it, but as we know, Joker never actually really cares who Batman is. But I kind of like the idea that Joker does know. He just kind of like dangles it over Bruce a little bit. He'd talk about how Batman of all people should know what it's like to have a tragic origin story, and he thinks Batman lost his way, bringing in more boy wonders after what happened to Jason. He name drops Jason, and Batman kind of just blanks it out, continuing through this house of horrors, where he'd really lean into the haunted house vibes. A hall of mirrors, a tunnel of love, full of pictures of Batman arresting Joker taken by the media, a test of strength where Batman has to take down a Titan thug, that sort of thing. We really want to emphasise that Jason Todd's death in this universe is Batman's biggest failure, that he never really got over, and Joker knows that for a fact. We get the stealth section where Batman has to take out a room of thugs in the smelting chamber, and then after making his way through the smelting chamber and continuing to hear rumblings of Joker being healed, Batman takes out some more thugs and enters the Joker and Harley's quote-unquote office. And he'd find a cot and a pregnancy test in a frame within the cot with balloons surrounding it. Batman would comment on the test and say that that can't be accurate. A fall into the acid Joker fell into certainly doesn't do you any good. Batman carries on through the doors ahead and we meet Joker. This plays out the same. I think this scene is so well done from beginning to ending, like a lot of this game. I tried to do the story without the old fake Joker gag, but I just couldn't bring myself to leave it out. I think it's one of the best story beats in the whole series, and for the joke to pay off come the end, we need this scene in its entirety, obviously changing little bits of dialogue here and there to make it fit our story, but Joker would jump down, newly healed and ready to teach Batman getting his ass kicked 101. Joker, in fact, does not teach Batman anything, and gets his ass whooped. I'd obviously keep the lack of detective mode skeleton here as well for the keen-eyed player, but I think it would be fun to make the punching sound a little different when you hit Joker. Like, I don't know, make it really subtly sound a bit more wet, like slapping leather together. Just another fun little difference to hint that Clayface is actually Joker. The Joker's Funhouse fight plays out the same. This fight is so cool, it's really fun, and after the fight, Batman and Joker face off again, and as Batman goes for Joker, the roof caves in, trapping the Dark Knight, and the Joker, being the freaky dude he is, mounts Batman, pulling out a knife and asking if he wants to hear a joke. He says while he's been spending some time with him in this house of hoots, guess what? I've got your Robin. Batman tries to struggle out of the rubble but can't, and Joker tells Batman he really shouldn't keep sending birds to do a bat's job before kicking him in the head, knocking Batman out and leaving. We'd cut to Tim earlier in the night in the final part of the character swap sections of the game. You'd play as Tim underground, heading through the sewers to get another sample of Raish's blood, a sample he'd then have to get to Lucius Fox, so he could have a go at making a cure. I don't know which way we'd go, but on the way to Wonder City there'd be a few squads of Tiger Guards to take out, and Tim would comment on their increased presence to Oracle. Oracle mentions that must mean Protocol 10 is starting sooner than anyone thought, and we'd end up at the base of Wonder Tower with a ton of armed Tiger thugs guarding it. Tim would need to take them out, but when he goes to tell Oracle his findings, he'd discover his comms are jammed by Tiger's comms filling the airwaves down here. Tim says to hell with it and continues through Wonder Avenue. The secret door would have shut at this point, and Tim, rather than scanning the Wonder City Guardians, would isolate Batman's movements through the city to find out where he went. You'd follow a few clues to decipher where Batman got through to the League's hideout, being jumped by a few ninjas as you do, and eventually this would lead you to the door. And as Robin looks at how the mechanism works, a huge group of Joker thugs would surround Robin. After a combat encounter, Tim would see a trio of thugs wielding rocket launchers at the end of the avenue. They'd all fire at Tim, he'd dodge one, the other would knock him off balance, and the third one would knock him out, all before he managed to escape. The last thing we'd hear before we cut back to Batman would be a thug telling the rest of his men to round up the robots and grab the bird. Joker wants to talk to him. I wanted to add this part in to show how Tim got kidnapped, because I think this could be a fun little playable sequence. Would it be absolutely needed? Not really. This again could be DLC, or could be cut entirely. This really doesn't need to be here. The story wouldn't hinge on its existence, but it would be a fun way to show how Tim got taken, and would let the player play as Tim a little more, which could be fun. I think it's worth mentioning as well that I nearly made this another playable Nightwing section, but honestly, having Nightwing get another playable section felt really forced, and I think this doesn't feel as forced into the story and feels a bit more natural, just to give a bit more world building. We'd cut back to rubble, slowly being lifted off of Batman, and then we'd see the beautiful sight that is Dick Grayson lifting the rubble off of him. Batman would get up and tell Dick Joker has Tim, and they need to move now. Oracle would come over the radio and tell the pair to head outside, right this second. They'd grapple up through a hole in the roof, and as they appeared on the roof of the steel mill, helicopters would fill the sky, flying in formation above the original dynamic duo. The main theme of the game would kick in as Hugo Strange comes over the speaker system, announcing that Protocol 10 will begin in 3, 2, 1, and on the stroke of 1 the choppers would begin wiping out thugs with rockets. Tiger guards would flood the streets, gunning down any thug in their way. The whole city becomes a killing zone. This time the thugs are working together though to defend against Tiger, who are indiscriminate in their killing. Bodies would quickly begin lining the street, and a large-scale assault on the GCPD would begin with Freeze still inside. Batman tells Nightwing to go and save Freeze now, and he might be able to help Lucius with the cure when this all boils over. He tells Dick to be careful and forces him to go and save Freeze. Batman stands atop the steel mill, one of his sons in the hands of the most unhinged entity in the world, and the other fighting to save one of the only men in the world who can save his dad. Batman says he needs to go and save Tim, and to have Wayne Tech satellites converge on Arkham City to find Tim's tracker. But as Oracle begins activating the satellites for the second time tonight, Alfred comes over the comms. He says, "Sir, you have to stop Protocol 10. This is beyond insanity. I'll keep Master Drake's track alive, but please stop Strange." Batman replies and says, "Alfred, don't do this. Don't let me fail Tim like I failed Jason. Please." Alfred says that Batman can't let thousands die. Not tonight, not ever. You have to think if one life is worth saving while sacrificing thousands. I'm sorry, sir, but you know I'm right. Batman relents, clearly angry, and he tells Alfred and Oracle to keep Tim's tracker alive at all costs. He's going to shut down Protocol 10 and then go and get him. Oracle says that Wonder Tower is locked down by a 3-part combination code shared between 3 Tiger lieutenants. 2 are in the city and 1 seems to be in a helicopter. Batman heads out into the city, the streets being torn apart by Tiger, and we get 2 combat encounters on top of buildings against 2 different Tiger teams, with the last one standing from each group, giving Batman their part of the code before he heads after the helicopter like the main game. Once grappled onto the chopper, Batman hacks into the control system and grabs the code before gliding on over to the entrance of Arkham City's processing unit, where he'd have to fight a few squads of Tiger thugs off because this is a city-wide takeover and mass murder, so guards are everywhere. He takes them out and enters the processing unit from the main game. Here he'd take out a few more guards before Hugo Strange would appear on the monitor, holding a man hostage, and do his usual monologue with a few changes. He'd say, "Stop right there, Batman, we need to talk, and I know you wouldn't be allowed to live with yourself if your actions caused this poor man to die. I have a question for you. Before my arrival, this city was drowning under a tide of filth. Had you ever considered that all of this is your fault? Your presence creates these animals like germs. They spread. You created the environment that allowed the germs to mutate, to become stronger. Look at the Joker. Would he even exist if not for you? It must be depressing, all of your sacrifices, and yet you are the one to blame. Oh, this is beautiful. We have at long last defeated the great Batman. Soon you will be dead spiritually, your identity revealed to the world. The upload will begin soon. I told you, Wayne, you try to stop me, and everyone will know your secret. Now, guards, kill him. Tiger guards rush Batman, and after the fight, Batman tells Oracle to get eyes on Hugo's terminal. He's going to tell the world's news outlet who Batman is, and if he does, we're all in danger. Oracle says she can stop the upload remotely, but she needs a way in. Batman says that won't be a problem, and we get the usual section of going under the city, and then popping out at the Wonder City base, dealing with a ton of armed Tiger guards and heading up in the elevator. The whole time this is happening, Strange would be congratulating his men for completing this task. He says they'll be making moves to set up sister sites in other crime-ridden hotbeds like Metropolis, Keystone, and Bloodhaven, and eventually they'll rid the world of crime altogether, cementing Tiger and Hugo Strange as the ultimate protectors. Batman gets in the elevator and eventually he begins making the climb up to the top of the tower, taking out Tiger guards as he goes. On the way up, we hear Strange brag about the kills confirmed, the percentage of inmates murdered in cold blood. We could also see the courthouse, museum, and steel mill all hit with missiles as we make the climb. Once we've reached the top of the world, Batman is faced with the hardest encounter of the game. An inverted stealth room, gargoyles on the outside, guards on the inside. It challenges you to take a dig into your utility belt and stretch your wings a little more than usual. And if you head inside, Strange will find you and order his guards to your position, making the inside as dangerous as the outside is useless outside of its traversal opportunities. Sorry, I really had to gush about that. I think that's one of the best parts of Arkham City. Anyway, after taking out the guards, Batman kicks the door down into Strange's office in the centre of the room, and Strange stands there unfazed. He says, well, the great Bruce Wayne stands before me, a beaten as Batman loads up the nastiest straight kick ever, sending Strange flying across the table. Strange slowly crawls his way up, the screens behind him light up. They read, uploading 2%. Batman pushes Strange aside as he plugs a device in that Oracle connects to, and she begins shutting down the upload, Protocol 10, and Arkham City. Batman grabs Strange and we get a similar scene to the main game of him throwing Strange about like a ragdoll. I'd actually even have Strange put up a bit of a fight here, because as we see in his Asylum bio, this guy should be called Huge Swole Strange, because he is jacked underneath that lab coat. Batman obviously pretty easily puts him down, and Strange begins telling him he has already lost, and now he's just wasting time. He can't undo Protocol 10, and then he looks him dead in the eye and says, just like you can't save Tim. Batman slams Strange against the glass, forcing him to look at what he's done as he screams at him to look at it. Look at the pain he's caused, before asking him how he knows Joker has Tim. Strange says Arkham City is his domain. He knows everything, and he knows everyone. Then he kind of like crawls back from Batman, stands up, looks him dead in the eye again, and goes, Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, Barbara Gordon, Jason Todd. Batman punches Strange square in the jaw, knocking him out, before heading to the control terminal where the upload reaches 4% before the screen shuts off and Protocol 10 is brought to an end. Tiger commanders start confirming they're heading back to home base. Batman thanks Oracle for her work and she tells him to rescue Tim. Strange, blood coming out of his mouth, barely awake, manages to spurt out one final message. Activate protocols 11 through 12, passcode Wayne. A countdown begins and Batman looks down at Strange. Oracle tells Batman the tower will explode, and Strange goads Batman. Bruce, you can't kill me, you don't kill. Batman pulls the old Batman Begins on him, but instead of saying anything, he just looks at him, crashes out of the window at 3, and when the countdown hits 1, Batman gets hit by the shockwave, knocking his cape and forcing him to make a bit of a botched landing in the same place as the real game. Oracle asks Bruce if he's okay, and he says he is, and again thanks her. Joker comes on the giant monitor, a gun pointed at Tim's head, and says, well, that was a good firework display. Did you have anything to do with that, Batsy? I bet you did. Anyway, now strangers out of our little family portrait, I want you to try and hurry up to make sure we don't free up another space in the picture. You better hurry, or your boy Wonder is about to get his first starring role as the sidekick who dies in the final act. Batman calls Dick, Dick says Freeze and the GCPD are both still standing, and Bruce tells him to meet him at the Monarch. It's time to end this. This section is largely the same. Batman has to take out a bunch of snipers covering the Monarch Theatre, as Joker taunts him to go to him, holding Tim hostage. After the second to last sniper is taken out, Joker says he's going to get his front row seat. When Batman enters, we get a little cutscene of some flashbacks to the video Joker would send him when he was torturing Jason. Jason screaming for Batman's help as he was beaten and tortured for months on end. These screams would fade into Dick trying to get Batman's attention. Batman snaps out of it pretty quickly and tells Dick to follow him. Once the pair enter the theatre, Joker stands on stage with Tim held at gunpoint and the cure in his pocket. He tells the dynamic duo to take a seat. The show's about to begin. Batman tells Joker to give up. He's got the cure, he's healthy, he won. What more could he want? Joker replies by telling Batman he hasn't won until he and Batman are back to normal. While he was recovering, he admits he missed Batman and he just wanted tonight to be about getting their relationship back on track. Batman tells Joker that he's sick, to which Joker replies that actually, he's never felt better, he feels like a brand new person. At this point, we'd get a flashback through all of the little hints dropped by Joker that he literally wasn't himself. When we came out of the flashbacks, Tim would be shot at, but Nightwing would manage to get in front of the bullet, taking it for him as Batman lunges for Nightwing. Before we'd cut back to Joker, the real one, stood in the upper seating area clapping. Batman would grab Nightwing and check on him. At this point in the chaos, Tim would disarm the Joker on the stage and in one swift move knock him out. Batman tells Tim to take Nightwing and get him out of here now, and at this point the real Joker would ask Batman how he didn't see this coming. Two Jokers, it was the next logical step in his evolution, and in times like this, it's always best to keep up appearances, as the knocked out Joker would begin morphing in a really grim manner into Basil Carlo, aka Clayface. Batman would ask why he signed up with Joker and Carlo would say it was the role of a lifetime, before trying to crush Batman. This fight would play the same minus the sword. Instead, Batman would use a mixture of batarangs and his gauntlets to slice Freeze up. After freezing Carlo and slicing him to pieces, Joker would blow up the floor, saying they all need a little change of scenery. And it's here Batman and Clayface would drop into the Lazarus Chamber, where Batman, in a brief moment of calm before Clayface gets his bearings together, would note that Ra's gone but his sword is still jammed in the floor. Batman would pick it up and we'd fight Clayface for a second time as he spawns in his Clay minions. Although, in one of the only bits of cut content in this whole rewrite, I'll introduce the cut Clayface minions. These larger, more bulky foes would have to be beaten out by freezing them and then slicing them up twice. I think twice makes a little bit more sense since they're a bit bigger and thus beefier. I'll also give them some variation of like a charge attack to make these guys feel a little bit more unique. This will just add another layer of challenge on top of the normal minions and the clay projectiles Basil spits at you. After freezing Basil enough, Batman jumps in his mouth and we see the sword poking out left and right before he jumps out of his mouth, cure in hand, retrieved from Clayface's former jacket pocket. He'd take a swig of the cure, half of it to be exact, saving himself and curing his ailment. Joker would be stood on top of the generator for the machine powering the Lazarus Pit. Batman would javelin the sword right into it, cutting it down, sending Clayface crashing into the pit. The ensuing explosion knocks Batman out. When he wakes up, Joker is begging him for the cure. He taunts Batman, telling him that this whole charade is pointless because he knows Batman won't let him die. He brags he nearly killed him. Hell, he had Robin dead to rights and he would have added him to the count if your favourite son didn't spoil the party. Batman looks down at the cure and says, "Every decision you've ever made has ended in death and misery. I'll stop you and you'll just break out and do it again. I don't want either of us to die, but this only ends one way. One of us dead. Maybe you kill me, maybe I kill you. Sooner or later, doesn't matter. But I tried to stop it from coming to this. Just once I wanted to find another way. Do you understand? This is life and death we're talking about. My life, your life. I don't want your blood on my hand." Joker jumps on his back from behind and stabs him in the arm, causing Batman to drop the cure. Joker begins lapping it up like a dog. Pathetic. He asks Batman if he's happy now, and Batman, pulling the knife from his arm, stops, stares down at Joker, and says even after all he's done, even after all of the pain and misery he brings to the world, he would have saved him. Joker begins laughing, almost animal-like, coughing and spluttering through his final breaths, telling Batman that actually is pretty funny. As the camera pulls back into the sky, Joker dies by his own hand, lapping up his last hope of life off the floor like a desperate, pathetic husk of his former self. We fade to the outside of the theatre. Batman holds Joker's body in his arms, walking him out of the Monarch, where Batman was born and the Joker, ironically enough, died. Harley recoils in horror, dropping to her knees and crying as Joker's men would all take a step back. We then cut to the gates of Arkham City, the GCPD gathered outside, Commissioner Gordon talking to Robin as Nightwing sits on a cop car, a bandage over his bullet wound. The trio all look on in horror as Batman walks out to them with Joker's corpse. Dick asks what went on in there, with Gordon echoing the question, and Tim shouts at Batman, begging him to talk to them. Batman lays Joker's corpse on the hood of Gordon's car and walks into the camera as the scene fades and the credits roll. After the credits roll for a while, a scene fades back in. A warehouse on the outskirts of Gotham City, the focus of the shot. We cut into a lab, a very rogue-looking, dirty, disgusting lab. We hear laboured breathing coming from somewhere as the camera pans around the lab over to someone wearing a hood. The figure begins mixing some chemicals together, and we see some gloves with syringes on the table next to him. As the figure turns around, revealing himself to be Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, we lay eyes on his face, or what's left of it. It appears to be made of sacks, stitched on like some sort of sick Halloween outfit. We then cut to a table and a folder gets thrown onto it. It hits the table and Scarecrow turns around, pointing the liquid at whoever might be there. He tells whoever's there to come out and face their fears. The figure who threw the dossier comes out of the shadows. He steps into the light, a young man wearing a brown jacket with black hair, a J scarred onto his cheek. It's Jason Todd, the second Robin. He says, "Crane, I want to talk." And Crane says, "Who might you be then?" And he says, "It doesn't matter who I am, what matters is who I was." Scarecrow tilts his head, the scene cuts to black, and more credits roll, bringing the Batman Arkham City rewrite to an end. Well, there we go, folks. That's the rewrite. Is it a huge, complete story change? Well, no, but it was never meant to be. There are a few avenues I wanted to go down with this, but certain things wouldn't have lined up in my overall vision for the rest of the series, so changes had to be made. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what changes you'd make to Arkham City down below. But remember, keep it civil, and we can discuss this all day long. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it didn't let you down. I know it's been 5 months since the Arkham Asylum rewrite, but I hope it didn't let you down, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.